Hello and welcome to DFS Coach Talk. It is Wednesday, December 16th, 2020. I'm Andrew Hansen alongside Shane Caldwell, and it's week 15, and this is our Thursday night football preview. Shane, it's late in the season. We got to gear up here and crank up the volume.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's week 15, but we're excited about a nice little rematch from week 9, last time these teams played. The Chargers and Las Vegas Raiders. Raiders are, trying to stay on the edge of that playoff spot. Kind of tough for them to get in there. Chargers are just playing for pride at this point, but this makes for a nice fantasy team because both these defenses are kind of vulnerable in different spots, and there's a lot of injuries going on, and there's a lot of stars on these offenses. So this makes for a great fantasy team. So we don't really care if they're how they are in real life football. We just want fantasy production out of these teams and an exciting game. That's what we're looking for here.
Yeah, this is a great matchup for Thursday night. The 31-26 when these teams met in week 9. And the words from Vegas are we're expecting a similar high-scoring situation. And the lines, of course, courtesy of BetUS.com.pa on our show. And we've got Vegas favored by 3 at home, over under 53.5. And what we're going to do here on the Thursday night football preview, like we always do, is we'll start with the visiting team. We'll break down the Chargers. Then we're going to give you a tremendous offer from BetUS where you can combine your love for sports betting with DFS. So stay tuned for that. And then we'll finish up with the breakdown of the Raiders. Try to get you ready for the Showdown slate on both Draftkings and FanDuel. So, Shane, let's start with the Chargers side. The big story here is that the Raiders' defense has been struggling, to say the least. If you look at their last 4 games, they've given up 35, 43, 28, and then 44 points last week to Indianapolis, and that culminated with the decision by Gruden to fire the defensive coordinator, Paul Guenther. So they've been terrible on defense. They fired their defensive coordinator, and they've got a bunch of injuries on the defensive side. So Chargers have to be licking their chops here.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a good spot for Vegas. We're surprised that they're actually 3-point favorites here. But, they are the Las Vegas Raiders, and Vegas sets the line here. So I don't know if there's a little favoritism. Right. I don't think those guys are in the business of favoritism here. But, yeah, I mean, the Raiders defense coming on a short week have already been getting lit up. Indianapolis just annihilated them last week here. And they got lit up by Atlanta, the Jets almost beat them. So they've had a rough go at it here. The offense has been pretty good for the most part, but their defense can't keep up. Now, this week, it looks like they're going to be – there's a lot of guys that are out. Their linebacker, Morrow, defensive end, Farrell, Damon Arnett, the starting corner, starting safety, Abram. So they have a ton of guys out. And now on their offensive side, Henry Ruggs is out on the COVID list. Nevin Lawson, their other starting corner, is a big questionable. He hasn't practiced, but he might go. But even if he plays, he's kind of limited. So they're pretty banged up here. So this is looking like a good spot for Justin Herbert, the great rookie who's kind of struggled of late. He's run into some tough matchups. They've had some injuries here and there as well. But this is looking like a good spot for Justin Herbert against one of the worst pass defenses in the league that's injured, coming on a short week here. These teams are familiar with each other, but yeah, and just in terms of the matchup, their secondary does not match up well against the wide receivers for the Chargers here. So this is a spot where the difficult thing on this showdown is, can you afford Justin Herbert and be able to get in all the other studs that you want? But I think Justin Herbert's probably going to be a priority because this looks like a spot where he can throw 3 to 4 touchdowns. If you're playing on Draftkings, most likely to get that 300-yard bonus here. I mean, they can, of course, run the ball. Eckler looks good. They definitely can rotate some running backs in there. But I look for them to attack the passing game. As the Raiders are a little bit better against the run typically than they are against the pass right now. I think Justin Herbert's definitely a top priority here. The passing game, of course, you can pair him with Keenan Allen. I know Keenan Allen was kind of limited in practice, but hopefully he's a full go and healthy. Keenan Allen should be matched up in the slot against Lamarcus Joyner, who's one of their worst corners. And even if he rotates to the outside on the other spot, he's going to be going up most likely against a backup string, cornerback. So he's in a great matchup here. Keenan Allen, obviously one of the best route runners and most consistent wide receivers in the league. Then it comes down to, for the passing game, the Mike Williams news. Mike Williams went out last week week. And Colts there, or no, not against the Colts. Yeah, he went out last week against Atlanta in the first quarter with that back injury. So we got to see, is Mike Williams going to be able to play? Because if he doesn't play, then you can look at some of these backup guys like Tyron Johnson. Went in there and played a great game last week against Atlanta. He had 7 targets, caught 6 balls for 55 yards and a touchdown. So he's looking like the guy in terms of snap share and target share if Mike Williams is out, and you're going to need that form of value on FanDuel if you're trying to get up to all these high-priced studs here. And then, of course, there's Hunter Henry. He's in a decent matchup against the Raiders. They're kind of middle of the pack against tight ends, but Hunter Henry is the main target of him, especially if Mike Williams is out. That's another big target in the end zone. And then, of course, you got Austin Eckler, who's the most dynamic running back in terms of being able to catch the ball and run the ball, and he's just so explosive in the passing game and the amount of targets he gets. You got to like Austin Eckler as well. The problem is to fit all those guys in there. It's pretty difficult to fit Allen, Eckler, and Herbert. It can be done, but you're going to have to sacrifice somewhere. So mostly I would say I love the passing game, and that includes Eckler for the Chargers, where it's going to be a little bit different when we talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. But for the most part, I like attacking this passing game, and I think that's where they're going to attack the weakness of the Vegas secondary here.
Yeah, I really like the passing game as well, and I love how Eckler is in that passing game, and he's got the running back action as well, and you can really beat Vegas in both departments. And Eckler is just one of my favorite players to play on a showdown slate because of that versatility, and now that he's back and healthy and getting a bunch of touches, and Herbert, loves to check it down to him. So I think on both sites you can do it. Like you said, it's challenging. On FanDuel, you're going to have to make a couple sacrifices with the next 2 guys. On Draftkings, one way to do it is to go with a cheaper captain. So I would play around with that. That's what I'm doing with my first build, is you get a cheaper captain in, and then you get those 3 studs on the Chargers, and you have a decent amount of money to fill out the lineup. So that's the approach I'm taking. And the news on Mike Williams is big because on FanDuel, he's much more expensive than Tyron Johnson. On DraftKings, they're pretty close, though, so you won't get the savings on Johnson that you would on FanDuel. With Henry, I agree with you. If Mike Williams is out, Hunter Henry becomes a little bit more attractive as that big target. But on the season, the Raiders have only given up 4 touchdowns to tight ends. Kelsey and Gronk had good games, but other than that, they've been pretty solid. So I'm not as big on Henry as I usually am. I like Waller on the other side a little bit better in terms of tight end matchups. And then I do want to mention Justin Jackson here, who's back in the lineup. He got 6 touches against Atlanta, three carries and 3 receptions. And I think he's going to take away the receiving action from Balaj. Balaj did get 7 carries last week. But Jackson's a guy that you can get for only $2,000 on DraftKings. Nice PPR price for him. And the defense is in play for me, the Chargers defense on DraftKings, just because of their price. But other than that, I feel very similar to your thoughts on this. I think the overall approach for the Chargers is going to be to try to pass it. Herbert had 326 yards passing and 2 touchdowns in that Week 9 matchup, and because of those injuries in the weak secondary, like you said, I think he's going to go to the air a bunch here on Thursday night.
Yeah, I mean, I think Eckler's a great play, and a lot of people are going to be looking at what Indianapolis did in the running game last week against the Raiders, but you got to keep in mind that the Chargers are banged up on their offensive line. They don't have Brian Bulaga. He's going to be out for this game. They've lost, their starting center earlier in the year. They've had a lot of injuries, so their offensive line is not as good for run blocking compared to that Indianapolis offensive line that was just opening up huge holes. They're really good at run blocking, so it's a little different matchup. That's why I think they might be more likely to attack in the passing game here. Obviously, I don't see who's going to be able to cover Keenan Allen and even these other, other 3rd and 4th wide receivers. I think they have good matchups here. So,
yeah, your boy Jonathan Taylor really exploded last week, and the Chargers' offensive attack is a little bit different than Indianapolis, like you said. Not quite the old school running approach. They do go to the air more to get it into Eckler's hands, so a little bit different. But all right, before we get to the Raiders side, check out this tremendous offer if you're into sports betting along with DFS from BetUS.com.pa.
Listen up, sports bettors. It's go time, so put down the beer and make every sporting event more exciting by putting stakes on the line. Earn bragging rights over friends as you rake in the cash from each week's betting action, but don't settle for any other book. Choose America's favorite sportsbook with over 25 trusted years in the industry. You need a sportsbook with integrity and longevity, and most importantly, a sportsbook that pays. BetUS has your game with action on football, baseball, and basketball, MMA, golf, horses, and even esports. No other sportsbook welcomes newcomers like BetUS with their jaw-dropping sign-up bonuses. Now we have the best book in the industry teamed up with the best DFS provider in the industry. Make your first deposit of $149 at betus.com.pa with promo code CoachTalk and receive a free membership with DFS Coach Talk with full access to our DFS lineups in NBA, NFL, PGA, and MLB, the best in the biz. Sign up today to make straight bets, future bets, prop bets, entertainment bets, live bets, and more. No other sportsbook in the industry is committed to their users like BetUS. So sign up now and get on the winning side of the ball.
Welcome back, and thank you to BetUS for that tremendous offer for our listeners. We'd love for you to take advantage of it and join the group that already has. Again, use the promo code CoachTalk, all one word, with that first deposit of $149, and reach out to us on Twitter. Let us know that you've joined. You can find us on Twitter at DFS Coach Talk. And then we'll get you an email, get you into our Discord. That's where we give out our full lineups for every slate in the NFL, every slate in NBA. We're giving out lineups to our members in NBA preseason. Good night going right now. And so we're just getting ready for opening day. So we'd love to have you. All right, Shane, for the Raiders, they are the 3-point favorites. We know that Gruden likes to pound it and give it to Jacobs. And, you know, the first matchup between these two teams is a perfect example of that. In that game, which the Raiders won, they only had 160 net passing yards and they had 160 rushing yards. So they gave it to Jacobs. He had 65 yards and a touchdown. They gave it to Booker. He had 68 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Do you think that's going to be the game plan here again? And do you want to get Jacobs into your lineups?
Yeah, what I like about Jacobs is the recency bias here. If you look at the games they've played from behind, which is something that's was a little more unusual for them earlier in the year when they were really kind of dominating teams. So if you look at his game logs, he's not getting any carries. He's been injured. He's been banged up, in and out of the lineup. Booker started a few games. So I like that. You can take advantage of the recency bias. So people are going to be looking at this as, a matchup that's kind of a neutral matchup against the Chargers, but they're looking at it like Josh Jacobs isn't getting the carries. I think Josh Jacobs is going to get a heavy workload of somewhere around 25 carries in this game. I think the game plan, if you're the Las Vegas Raiders, your defense is banged up. You don't want to be putting your defense in a vulnerable position and getting them worn out and having Herbert, go out there and light them up. You don't want to get into another shootout here because that hasn't worked well for you lately if you're the Las Vegas Raiders. So the best way is you have that big offensive line who's mostly healthy against, a defense in the LA Chargers that is also missing some key defenders here against the run. They're going to be missing their main middle linebacker in Perriman. He's actually doubtful. He's not out yet, so check the report there. And also their starting safety, Adderley. If those guys are out, that hurts them up the middle. And the Raiders are going to pound the ball with Josh Jacobs. I think he's going to get a heavy workload here. He only had, 13 carries last week in a blowout against Indianapolis. So that means he should be pretty fresh on a quick turnaround. He's currently not on the injury report. So I would prioritize Josh Jacobs, even though there's great superstar players in good positions here, like Keenan Allen and obviously Eckler. I would probably prioritize Josh Jacobs over that because I think you're going to get him at slightly lower ownership, and you're going to get a game script where it's going to be heavily involved. It kind of reminds me. It's funny, we're in week 15, but all the way back in week 1, he was our favorite running back. And I remember we crushed it with him because he scored 3 touchdowns, but he had 25 carries that game. This is the type of game that he has that type of upside of, 30 fantasy point upside. Even if he doesn't get that, I could see him having a game like similar he did in mid-November against Denver. He had 21 carries, 112 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns. And he also caught 4 balls in that game. That helped too. So he had 27 FanDuel points. So that's what I'm looking for Josh Jacobs. I think they have a pretty nice advantage in terms of run blocking against the LA Chargers front here, and I think that's their path to win this game. and then that would set up the occasional play action pass. Obviously, they're going to be using their couple of their guys. They are missing Henry Ruggs, their deep threat, so that changes things. But so I look for a big Josh Jacobs game here. What do you think?
Before we get to the passing game, I'll echo that and say I do think they'll give him a heavy workload if they can. That's going to be the goal. He's one of the most game script dependent running backs in the NFL. If the Raiders are ahead, he just keeps getting fed by Gruden, and he'll rack up 20-plus carries. If they're behind, like last week, you get 13 or 14 carries, and you don't want him on your DFS team. So it's either hit or miss with him. There's not going to be probably an in-between. So if the Raiders are winning this game, you want him in your lineup. If they're behind, you probably don't. So that's the approach on Jacobs. With the passing attack for Las Vegas, as you mentioned, Ruggs is out because of COVID. So how does it break down? Along with Aguilar, who else are you looking for in terms of targets?
I mean, I think Derek Carr could be fairly highly owned because he's been getting such high volume. Last few games, 47 attempts and 45 attempts, but they were playing from behind. They were playing in these high shootout games. They don't really want to do that. So I think that this game would be a little different where, again, they're going to try to attack the weakness. The Chargers have a pretty good secondary. I mean, they have a couple injuries, but they still have really good cover corners. Once Chris Harris Jr. came back, they still got Casey Hayward. They got Michael Davis, who's a pretty solid cover corner. So I don't think you really attack them. You're missing Henry Ruggs, your deep speed threat there. So I don't think you attack them. So this is more of a low volume game for Derek Carr. So because of that, I would pretty much fade Derek Carr at his price. He's had some good games. He's popped here and there, but I think people are going to go back to him, go back to the well there, because they see the type of volume and fantasy points. But I don't think that this game script lends to that well. If you are going to partner with him, obviously you can look at Darren Waller. He's in a good matchup against the linebackers and the safeties for the LA Chargers. So Darren Waller, obviously, he's capable of those huge monster games there. I don't know if this is a ceiling game for him because I'm not expecting most pass volume, but obviously he has the highest target share and the number one receiver on this team. So I like Darren Waller. Obviously, you can go back to Nelson Aguilar. I think he's going to be really highly owned because he's one of the more reasonable priced, middle price guys here. He'll see a lot of Michael Davis, who's probably one of the better cover corners for the Chargers. So I like Aguilar. I'm just not, I'm a little bit apprehensive about him because I don't know if it's going to be a high volume game, but I am pretty confident the Chargers can score on them, which means at some point the Raiders are going to have to pass, and Aguilar should be their main guy. I guess Aguilar is going to have to be your poor man's Calvin Ridley, because Calvin Ridley lit him up last week, and he's kind of similar to Calvin Ridley, like a small, quick, shifty type wide receiver. Obviously not as good as Calvin Ridley, but Aguilar's been their number one guy, and he's been great this year. So if you're looking for a reasonably priced wide receiver, I think he's the guy. If you're going to go real deep, then I'm looking at someone who will take some snaps from Henry Ruggs, who's out. I'm looking at Bryan Edwards, the rookie. Interesting, he's $400 on DraftKings. So if you want to punt a position and just load up on the studs on DraftKings, I think Bryan Edwards is the guy, because then he just needs to catch like 3 or 4 passes, and he hits value at $400 there. He's a big receiver, a big physical guy. He's not like a burner fast guy. He's more of a possession receiver, but he does have a little bit of run after the catch ability. It's not like he's slow, and he's a big physical receiver. And he struggled most of the year, but I think he's finally healthy, and he should know the offense. And with Ruggs out, this is his opportunity to finally shine. So I think Bryan Edwards could actually make a couple plays, and that's all it's going to take. And you need to find value somewhere on this slate. And if you think the Chargers are going to get up, so if you're stacking the Chargers passing game on the other side, and you think the Raiders are going to have to pass in the second half, then Bryan Edwards is going to be part of that, because they can't just throw the ball to Darren Waller every single time, even though they probably will try. So I like Bryan Edwards here as the sleeper guy. I know the other guy, Zay Jones, is in the mix there as well, but I prefer the big physical, young, talented Bryan Edwards here, and I think he might get maybe a couple looks in the end zone as well, because he's a big guy that can kind of box you out and go up and high point the ball. So that's what I'm looking at here for the Raiders side here. But I'm focusing mostly on that running game with Josh Jacobs, and I'm hoping that some people fade Jacobs because they're trying to get up to these other expensive guys.
Yeah, I like Jacobs, and so in the lineups where I'll build a couple for in case the Raiders running game works, he'll be in there. But I think my primary lineups are going to be where the Chargers have success passing the ball, and the Raiders are going to have to try to play catch up. So it's not going to be a Josh Jacobs night, and I'll have to get a little bit of exposure to the Raiders passing game. And I think that's a good point there with Edwards as a potential value play. You know, he and Zay Jones, neither one of them has been getting much action lately with Ruggs in the lineup. Back in week 4, Ruggs didn't play, and Zay Jones had 4 catches that week, but Bryan Edwards didn't play. So I like your analysis there to get some size with Edwards in Ruggs' absence. I also like Renfrow here. Hunter Renfrow, in that week 4 game when Ruggs didn't play, he got to step up a little bit. He got 5 catches for 57 yards. And in the last 3 weeks with Ruggs, he's had 7, 4, and 5 receptions. So he's a more consistent part of the passing game. He's obviously more expensive than a guy like Bryan Edwards. And you can attack the Chargers a little bit more over the middle in the slot as compared to the outside. So I like Renfrow here. Waller, like you said, kind of middle-of-the-road matchup, but a little bit better than Henry. The Chargers have given up 9 touchdowns. So, and Waller is one of those. He got in the end zone against the Chargers back in week 9. So I like Waller, but he's really expensive, so he wouldn't be in my first lineup this week. Before I forget, Shane, I did want to, talking about earlier in the season, I wanted to circle back to Eckler here for a minute because we didn't get to talk about the actual stats of running backs catching the ball against Las Vegas, and it's been a pretty good way to attack them this year. Kamara had 9 catches for 95. You know, he's done that against a bunch of teams. But remember that Rex Burkhead game where he had 3 touchdowns against Vegas?
Yeah, that was classic.
So he had 2 on the ground and 1 through the air. He caught 7 balls that day for 49 yards and a touchdown. And if Burkhead can do it, we know that Eckler can just smash. So, you know, once again, I just want to highlight that with Eckler. So really fascinating slate here with these 2 running backs, and they're different styles. And depending on who's ahead is going to be the key of which one you want in your lineup.
Yeah, and it's an interesting decision. Are you trying to fit Keenan Allen and Eckler, who both have excellent matchups, and their skill set really fits the game plan here? But then if you're loading up on those guys and you're trying to get a quarterback as well, then you're not going to be able, it's going to be much harder to get up to the high price guys, you know, on the Raiders side. So yeah, it's a tricky game script here. I mean, technically the Raiders are favored, so you'd say the Josh Jacobs play is good. But like you said, both of us kind of feel like it's a mismatch with the Chargers passing game versus this Raiders,
Yes.
you know, defense. But I do strongly feel like the Raiders are going to have those long drives where they really run the clock out and wear out that Chargers defense and keep their defense on the sideline, which is where you want them, the way that's looking there. So, and to keep Herbert on the sideline too, and those weapons. So that's what I think the game plan is, as long as it stays close, which I think it probably will stay close, at least in, you know, going into the second half. And then, you know, we'll see if some team breaks out here. But yeah, I mean, Vegas is at home on a short week, so obviously the Chargers don't have to travel that far. It's pretty quick travel, but they still have to travel, and they're still not at home. So I think that gives Vegas the slight edge there. But yeah, I think this is like I said, in my opinion, it's a Josh Jacobs breakout game if the game script goes right, though. Like, that's a big if, right? Because the Chargers could light them up. But as long as it stays somewhat close, they'll still stick with the run, because yes. I don't think they're set up well to throw 45 times again. And I think the Chargers had 3 interceptions. Their defense did last week. So I don't think you want to just, you know, go out there and sling the ball over against those corners. They're pretty solid.
Yeah, they really are. And what we're going to do between now and kickoff is finalize the lineups on FanDuel and Draftkings. And that's why we offer membership, is to give actual lineups to our members. We give the full lineups on FanDuel, the cash lineup, the GPP lineup, and then we give the core plays on DraftKings for the one-game slate. On the main slate, we give out the big clipboard with core plays and pivots, so you can build lineups there. So we'd love to have you. If you want to do the BetUS option, use that promo code CoachTalk. If you're not interested in that, you just want to become a member, you can just go to our website, dfscoachtalk.com, and pick the length of time you want. You can do a week, a month, or the NBA Winter Special here that we've offered here in December that actually takes you all the way through April 1st for $149. So We'd love to have you. That gives you access to all of our sports, all of our lineups, every slate. In terms of the podcasts, please do hit that like button and subscribe on YouTube so you know when our podcasts post. We're doing 5 NFL podcasts per week, and we're about to start up 5 NBA podcasts per week. Social media, you can find Shane at DET Sports Shane. You can find me at Language Olympic, and the coach is at JOESARVADI. Did we hit everything, Shane?
I think so. And also, for everyone listening out there, let us know how the audio quality is on the podcast and YouTube videos. We just hooked up our new microphones this week, and we're just testing them out to see, looking to improve our audio quality. So we'll take some feedback on that to let us know how it sounds.
Yeah, we'd love your feedback on that and anything else. We appreciate all of your support, and thank you for tuning in here today. Good luck with your lineups on Thursday. Again, make sure to check in with us later in the week for our Week 15 main slate podcast. We'll go by position: quarterbacks, running backs, wide receiver, tight ends. And next week, early in the week, we'll have our first NBA regular season podcast. So looking forward to that. And on behalf of Shane Caldwell and the rest of the DFS Coach Talk team, I am Andrew Hansen, and we'll see you next time as we look to crush it in DFS.